I'm delighted to be here. Got to turn the phone off. I'm out here in sunny Southern California. My mother's home. She's not feeling well, so Karen and I are out here sort of helping her along. But I was still able, through the miracle of modern electronics, to sort of put this thing together. Today, before we talk about tuning oboes and bassoons, I want to do a real quick review of just how one tunes any instrument. I'm certain most of you know this, but having a review of what you do know will tell you exactly what you're not supposed to do. So we have two bores for instruments, tubular and conical. And then we have a lot of instruments that are kind of hybrid of both of those, a trumpet with a bell, or a clarinet, or a trombone with valves in the middle, tuba with valves. The only true tubular bore is the flute. When that's something I found really interesting on a piccolo is reversed. It's reversed. Clarinets, trumpets, trombones, hybrid, double reeds, saxophones, cornets, euphonium, tuba, those it changes the if that changes the length, express tuning slides.
Uh-oh, seems we lost Ken, everybody.
Oh,
Maybe he's coming back now.
yes.
Can hear you, Ken. Can't see you.
Okay, well, I'm just going to keep, I'm just going to keep talking. If you've got that PDF, you don't need to see me. Tuning the clarinet, the length of the clarinet's extended and it creates a gap around certain notes, not every note, certain notes. The clarinet's an easy fix because you can put in tuning rings, but it's that gap which is the big problem. Brass instruments, Hal was already talking about, this has really got a nice solution because short lengths of tubing are inserted even into the conical bore instruments. So you don't have any gap in your tuning area. In theory, the change from conical to tubular and back should create problems, but in practice, the tube section is usually so short in relationship to the overall length of the instrument, it's a mild effect. Also remember that those tuning issues are usually around the first overtone above the fundamental, and most brass players aren't playing around that area. Okay, am I offline? Am I back?
You're good.
Okay, good. Saxophone, Adolf Sax, most of you know, is the creator of euphonium. He designed an elegant solution for the saxophone. The core of the saxophone, the cone of the saxophone starts at the very tip of the neck. The mouthpiece bore is tubular, so no matter how much you insert the saxophone into the mouthpiece, the length of that cone is never altered. So tuning the overall length of the saxophone is really quite simple and effective. The next slide is now on to the problem children. Are we getting the slideshow at all? I don't think we are.
I've got it.
Okay, our problem children are the double reeds. And the double reeds
Now I've got
are a deceptive
you're having
instrument
a little
as
bit
far
of
as
response issue, Ken.
tuning
I've got
goes.
the PDF
'Cause
opened up in a second window just in Chrome, which I think everybody can do, and maybe the response issues will be a little less.
Yeah.
Screen sharing.
Okay. Okay. So then I won't. Let me. Yeah. Ironically, this is working great all day long until now. Anyways, the oboe and the bassoon are deceptive in the way you see the oboe reed push in or the bassoon vocal. It gives the false impression that you can change the pitch like you would a saxophone or a flute by just pulling out the instrument, the tube, the tone generator. But that's a real big mistake because you're changing the conical bore to a tubular bore, and it increases dramatic change in the size of the bore. If you go to the next slide, where you can see the picture of the inside of an oboe receiving socket, that small hole in the middle is the actual bore. The big gap around that is what the cork normally fills up. And I disassembled a reed on the right-hand side of that to where you see the reed, you see the metal tube, called the staple, and then I peeled the cork off the staple, and it's considerably smaller. It's designed very precisely to line up with the hole in the oboe socket, and so is the end of the bassoon vocal. And so if you pull out your reed, you put a big chunk of gap in there, almost 50% more space than it needs. The next slide is entitled Shorter plus Closer is Trouble. All woodwind instruments operate by changing the length of the bore. Every time you pick up a finger, the instrument gets shorter. For our discussion, this means that the closer the nearest open hole is to the area of instability, the more radical that instability will be. So if you think of where the oboe reed is up there going into the top of the oboe, that means that your fingers G, A, or B, those notes are very close to where that big gap is in the bore, and it makes a huge mess of those notes. This is bad news, but because we know now what it does, we know not to do it. The next slide is titled Bassoon Vocals and Wild Notes. The bore of the bassoon starts at the tip of the vocal. There are very precise expansion rates, and it's very easy to see it on the vocal. The good news here is that vocals come in different lengths. The lower the number, the shorter length. Number 1 is the shortest, and number 5 is the longest. If your bassoon is always sharp, no matter what the reed you're using, just by changing the vocal to a longer vocal will solve that overall sharpness. The downside is bassoons are usually shipped with number 1 and number 2 vocals. And these are your shortest vocals, the sharpest vocals, and for the most part, the vocals you don't want to be using. Most reeds, commercial reeds, are sort of designed to use with the number 3 vocal. It makes the pitch more stable. The tone is actually a little better usually. And like I said, it works with commercial reeds. The wild notes for bassoon, if you pull the vocal out, are from B flat 2, which is the second B flat below middle C, until open F, which is the F below middle C. Those are the shortest notes on the bassoon. They're not very stable to begin with. And if you pull the vocal out, you're really creating trouble. And also those, if you think about it, those of you who are junior high directors, that's where your bassoons play all the time.
Well, that's just the meat and potatoes of B flat and F keys, right?
Yeah, and that's our worst place. And that is the, so don't pull the vocal out, go buy another one. Okay. The next slide is the oboe vocal. It's not called the vocal, it's called a staple, but it really is the vocal. It does the same thing. The beginning of the oboe starts at the tip of the metal tube you can see on that slide. It also has very precise conical expansion rates. to line up at the end of the reed into the opening of the oboe down in the socket. Reed makers use different length vocals, different length staples, but you can't purchase your favorite reed on different length staples. So unless you want to start making your own reeds, you are stuck with the commercial length. So you can't change pitch by pulling that reed out. For the oboe, the most affected notes are G4 to C5. And the second octave between E and C, that's almost all of the second octave. That is right in the sweet part of the oboe. And also it's where they have to tune with flutes 90% of the time. So this is not a very wise area to be messing around by pulling the reed out. So the next slide, neither push nor pull, but there is a solution. If you can't push it in or pull it out, and there aren't tuning slides, how do you tune? Well, we have to go back to what the tone generator is. The double reed has a lot in common with the brass instrument tone generator, which is another double reed. If you buzz a higher or lower pitch on the trumpet, you will get actually a different note, another partial. If you buzz a higher or lower pitch on a double reed, you will sharpen or flat the note you are playing. So if you force the reed to go really high or low, you might get the next partial, which for the oboe is the octave. For the bassoon, it can be even higher than that, an octave and a half, even 2 octaves. So the solution is to change the pitch on the reed, which seems simple enough, but it's a real skill. And when do you start that skill? Well, real young. You got to practice. Next slide. And you got to play on the reed as if it were a musical instrument. This is my oboe reed here. Dan, you recognize that?
Very much in my house recently.
Yeah. Gross movements on that reed can change the pitch of the reed quite a bit. I'm moving that reed around, maybe change of the reed. Micro adjustments will produce a very slight pitch change as much as down to 1 beat. And now we're going in something a lot smaller than quarter tones. So how many notes did I go through there? Well, I did a perfect fifth, so that's the next couple of slides, sort of a review of the double reed embouchure, but still hit the high points. What you're doing with your lips is you're actually trying to create the equivalent of a trumpet mouthpiece cut by providing a real minimally flexible circular surround that controls the reed. The firmer the lips, the better. You can't make your lips too firm. Embouchure itself is not in the mouth. It's between and in front of the teeth. And we bunch it enough so that you have to force your jaw apart. You also can't open your jaw too much in the embouchure unless it actually pulls your lips apart. That's just about as far as I can drop my jaw. So that gives me a lot of room in between my teeth to bunch the muscles in. You use those muscles to grip the reed. We don't bite on it with thin lip over the teeth, but we do grip it with our muscle, hanging onto the reed pretty tight. There should be no unnatural exaggeration of the overbite on oboe or bassoon. This is really important. Sometimes do a massive overbite. But that's just for the extreme notes. We're talking about high A, B, C, even D. Any notes below that, it's exactly the same as the oboe. You try to keep your very natural overbite. The next page says reed placement, neutral position. The neutral position is sort of a physically memorized spot in the embouchure that all range, tone, and intonation corrections are derived from. Come back to it each time. And that really takes sixth graders about 2 weeks to learn, and that's it. The tip of the reed goes right here on the wet line. Move it in just a little. Top lip comes down wherever the overbite dictates. Grip the reed, lip muscles, and the reed stays on the same location on the lips. When I move the reed in and out, my lips are actually traveling in and out. We don't want the reed to slide through the lips because then you're not controlling the reed and you get the crow sound. To actually do this, you have to dry your lips and sometimes dry the reed if it's slipping through. The next page is neutral position continued. The angle that the reed comes out of a student's mouth should follow the overbite. Now, I'm not going to blow too hard because the reed, if I don't hang on to it, it will probably go flying across the room. But that's my natural overbite. If a student has a pronounced overbite, the reed may project down dramatically. And then they'll be holding their horn, an oboe, almost like a clarinet. If a student has an underbite, well, the instrument can actually be played straight out. Harold Gomberg, famous oboist with the New York Philharmonic, played his oboe straight out all the time. And he had no overbite. I've had one student that had an underbite, and that wasn't as successful with this instrument, but still, we got them to drop his jaw enough that the musculature took over. One of the most pronounced overbites I ever had was a student named Sartita Bhandari. She played bassoon. We bent the crook of the vocal so much that it was almost coming straight up into her mouth like a clarinet reed does. So that consideration doesn't really matter. What we're really not wanting to do is pinch on the reed. Now I'm going to move this reed up and down through the to where it is pushing up against the overbite, up the teeth, and then down. And you'll hear the pitch change and the tone change. Until it pinches off. So whatever the overbite is, we're good with it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think this is really fascinating. You know, typical, you know, myself absolutely as guilty as anybody. We band directors tend to like kind of one size fits all things. So we shouldn't feel, it sounds like we should not feel like the oboe needs to be a certain distance from the sternum across the board. It has to be variable based on each player.
That's correct. Usually it's in 30 to 40 degrees where we would all want to see it, right? From that point of view.
Right.
But doesn't have to be, and it doesn't exclude anybody's overbite from playing the instrument.
Right.
It can be just about anywhere. The next slide is spots on the bassoon reed. You've been hearing me play the reed with different pitches. In theory, there's an exact spot on the reed for each note on the oboe bassoon. Because the bassoon has 52 plus notes, you would have to divide that distance of travel into 52 spots. And I guess you could number them. I never knew anybody that was willing to take that practice on. The point is that there is a sweet spot for each note. And finding the sweet spot, I don't know if I'll have time to go into that today. We'll see if I get through the rest of this, is predictable. You can find it. All you have to really do is keep playing a single note, play a G, move the reed out till it goes flat, bring it back in till it just comes in tune, and your ears will tell you when you're getting the fattest sound. And what's happening then is you're actually aligning your own harmonic overtones to where your own harmonics are in tune with each other. You get too much reed in the mouth, and then you're getting preponderance of the first octave and the upper partials, which there are a lot of them on the double reed, and they go out of tune with themselves. So if you look at a tuner, the overtones are not standing still, although the fundamental might be. So your own note is out of tune with itself. Although there's all these positions on the reed for oboe and bassoon, playing the song I just did is very functional because that's close enough. Each half step on the reed kind of corresponds to 4 or 5 notes on the instrument. There's a direct relationship. If you want to play a low note successfully, you play a low note on the reed, high note on the reed. So a lot of it is intuitive. And once you get your beginners realizing this intuitive, they start doing amazing things on their own. They kind of figure it out quickly. The next slide talks about the oboe reed range. And the range of the reed should be from about an F4 to D5, with A440 being the primary pitch created in your neutral position. That's really what we're looking for. In neutral, for those of you who at one time in your life drove a stick shift, it's where you can feel where all the other gears are. From neutral, do I play in that neutral position? Yeah, part of the time. But if I start there and I have a high D coming in on the oboe, I know where I have to go. And if I have a low D, I know where to go. I have this in the PDF. There's this cute little recording of me playing the reed, but I've been doing all of that, so we're going to skip that one. The next one is the bassoon reed range. And it has a range of almost an octave, which makes sense because of the vast range of the bassoon. From middle C up to B flat, or even possibly a C, with F being your neutral position. Once again, I teach 6th graders this stuff. Thank you to the Russellville School Districts for years for allowing me to use their kids as laboratory. And they picked this tone when you're also practicing pitch on the reed. We are looking for a pure sound, pure tone, fuzzy tone, and then the worst tone of all, the crow. The first solution for double reed players to get a pure tone is just to blow hard. No matter what their embouchure is, no matter how weak their musculature, if they blow hard, they will get a pure sound. Then as their muscles develop, they start gripping it more, they can start controlling the volume. But you always want to hang on to the pure sound. I wrote down on the slide that GIGO is the operational principle with tone. If the reed sounds good, so will the instrument. GIGO is an old computer acronym for garbage in, garbage out. Those change the tone dramatically on the same note. Now, tuning with another instrument. This is, I think, what I advertised that this was all about. It's also a technique that's got to be started from day one. I teach it to beginners. They pick up right away to match pitch. Because you're actually physically moving something around, they can figure that out. On the reed, on the reed. This is what it sounds like tuning with a flute. I don't know if this is going to come through, Dan. There's a PDF there, have the audio clips on it. I don't think so.
Let me check here, Ken.
If not, I'm going to try a little.
Yeah, it doesn't look like I can play them.
Okay, I'm going to try splitting the screen again. We'll hope it doesn't crash.
Great.
Let's see here. Where did it go? Right there. Did you all hear that?
Yeah.
Cool. Isn't that great?
Fun.
Yeah. That sounds like, yeah. We've all heard that before. That's how it's done. Karen was holding the flute steady. I was just moving the reed from way out until it was just, when it sounded almost like vibrato, I was just a few beat frequencies off. And then I went into a pure unison. That was on a D above middle C, a higher, the octave above, and then back out again. And you could actually count the frequencies. It was going so slow. And that's, the beginners pick this up very quickly. It's not a hard concept to hear. And it's an easy adjustment. It's very mechanical. You want to change your pitch, you just move the instrument around. You don't have to do anything really per se with the embouchure. The next slide is entitled "Always a Soloist, Never a Section." And this is really true. Even if you have two oboes in your band, if you're lucky enough, they don't make a section. Even if those two oboes played perfectly with each other and at concert pitch, we all know that they're still going to. The double reeds have to learn how to adjust. It is part of their mission in life. Whether they like it or not, it doesn't really matter. They have to know how to do this because there are never going to be enough oboes to call it a section. We're not going to have 20 oboes, 30 oboes. So we are always, no matter how good we are always the odd man out and have to tune with everybody else. So this can't be ignored, or you ignore it at your peril. And yeah, that's one of the reasons, you know, we all pick the profile of an oboist or bassoonist, somebody that is comfortable being a loner. But as far as the ensemble goes, they have no choice on that. The next slide is tuned at the factory. each differing instrument, no matter if it's a student or pro, has inconsistencies in the bore. That's because double reeds are conically shaped and it's carved out of a plastic or wooden stock. And there has to be undercutting by hand of all the tone holes on every instrument, even the cheap ones. They do a little of that. And that's adjusting the pitch. So from one serial number to the next, coming at the end of the factory assembly line, the instruments are not consistent. There's a tendency, which I agree to, sort of as a student gets better, they get onto the better instruments. You don't necessarily want to put an $8,000 oboe in the hands of your sixth graders. But as soon as possible, they need to get on an instrument that they can stay on for a long time, because they have to learn those inconsistencies. And switching an instrument every year, which is admirable, it's also kind of destructive for those players. Now, the good news is that you can map your horn sitting there with a tuner. And even when you apply all of these solutions. And that is the
Ken, I'm not sure if you can hear me or if anybody else is hearing you. I think we're losing you.
Let's see here.
Think you're back?
Okay, I get it. Better, not better. Am I sort of back? Okay, okay. Sorry about this. I'm actually in beautiful Palm Springs. It's like 100 degrees out, and that swimming pool is looking good. All right, now on to the conclusions, which is the next to last slide. The double reed has to be the reed in the mouth has any more complicated, I don't think. Then someone learning to get 6 or 7 notes on the same valve just by buzzing slight different partial, or maybe those marimba players with 3 or 4 mallets in their hands. We do this stuff every day. The good news is these problems are predictable. This is if they're not playing with this round embouchure like I've talked about here, then there aren't any good solutions. They're biting on the reed with thin embouchure. Then that is pinching the reed. The overtones are going out of tune with themselves, and they are
Uh-oh. I think we might have lost him completely.
Unmute. Okay.
Ken, are you there?
I think I'm back. I hope.
Looks like you're coming back.
Putting the elbow together. If you're there with the reed in the right and wrong position, yes, I see y'all. I see some motion.
There you
Just
are.
getting a drink from your sippy cup.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. All right. Now, finding the sweet spot for tone is as simple as playing the note, going out of tune, coming back up into pitch barely. And that is the area where most of the overtones line up. The further I go in, it doesn't get much sharper, but I start accentuating higher overtones, and the overtones are going out of tune with themselves. So it becomes even more nasal than the oboe usually is. So it really is right on the cusp of being flat and in tune is where the sweet spot is for each note. Now I'm going to show you the difference of an octave though. I will do the low G, find the sweet spot, then play the high G, and you'll see how much I have to adjust to make the high G work. It wouldn't even go up the octave until I moved the reading considerably and found its spot. Here's that G. I don't know if the lighting is such. Let me see if you can see this. That fuzzy sound there is when I put the octave key down, nothing happened because I was in the real wrong spot of the reed. And when it hopped up the octave, it was the right spot on the reed. And that was right at the cusp up there for going flat levels on the instrument. Any questions?
Any questions, anyone? Seems not.
Okay, well, I am available. My email is on the PDF, so is my phone number. If I don't recognize your phone number, I won't answer, but you can text me and then I'll call you back.
Well, I was able to follow along from the website every step of the way. And so I hope everyone else was as well, or if not, boy, I really encourage everybody to go check that attachment and PDF out. Ken, thank you. Amazing presentation. I thought a lot of things that I learned just in this 45 minutes, and I hope I can include in my teaching, and I'm sure everybody else as well. And I hope everyone will stay in touch. And as you said, you know, give Ken a call, shoot Ken a text, and get him into your band rooms as soon as you know, we get back to having band rooms and bands and things like that, which hopefully will be soon.
Yeah,
So,
if I can interject, Dan,
please.
I'm doing a little bit more in-depth version of this, which is focusing on beginning players for the ABA, the virtual ABA that's coming up. So that'll be online, and it's going to be focused not so much just on tuning, but actually making the embouchure, the whole concept of playing the reed by itself, stuff that you need to get sixth graders going.
Well, that's great to know. Yeah, we should all be there for that ABA presentation. We've got some thank yous in the chat, and also from me as well as the folks in the chat. Ken, all the best with your mom while you're out of state over there. And can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this.
It's my pleasure.
Everybody, next week, we've got a middle school presentation about middle school curriculum with Jim and the great Chip DeStefano from the Kraken High School, junior high school, excuse me, middle school outside of Chicago. And Nick Del Grazia will be presenting about clarinet. And I'm 99% sure he's making sure the timing will just work out right. But I'm really excited that on July 21, our repertoire session, we've pivoted a little bit given the current circumstances, and I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the Creative Repertoire Initiative. If you're not, I encourage you to find it on Facebook. The Creative Repertoire Initiative is a large group founded by Frank Kelly and a few other amazing composers to find ways to take currently existing band repertoire and make it work for maybe our reality of less than 30 players, 6 feet apart. Maybe we're going to be able to play some of the standard core repertoire if the composers are alive and they can work with us through this Creative Repertoire Initiative to make flexible instrumentation. And on July 21, Frank Kelly is going to come and join us and talk to us about that Creative Repertoire Initiative right here on our Tuesday evening hangs. So, Jim, anything else about next week?
Teresa Elliott's going to join us too. So it's going to be a middle school band discussion on where you start kids, how you start them and get them through 8th grade. Between the three of us, there are 4 Midwest performances and all kinds of crazy good middle school band stuff. So join us for that. It's going to be great.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Thanks again, Ken. Thanks, Cooper Jr. Great presentations. Appreciate everybody, and hopefully we'll see you next Tuesday evening. Thanks for joining us. All the best.